Hey, look, there's that was Stephen D'Amico, and this book he just gave us called Heaven on Earth, A Guide to Enlightenment and Human Unity. That's perfect. I need something to read. Like, seriously. Like, I'm reading all these old books right now. I got a big pile of books beside my bed, and it's just, none of it's doing it for me.
Well, I hope it does something for you.
Well, thank you very much for bringing these. So, Stephen, I don't know where you want to start, but this is exciting. So I don't know, where do you want to start? Let's get right into this. What are we talking about today?
I guess everything that you talk about while I was sitting on the couch listening to your show with the previous guest.
Yeah, because actually we haven't,
as
always on Thursday, we have a common thread, and the common thread seems to be changing the context of who we are as humans and the global consciousness, that everyone seems to feel it's flowing. The river's going, and either people are going to jump in and celebrate when they come to the surface, or they're going to just say, forget it, this is too much.
Is that really what's going to happen? Stephen,
no, it's what is happening.
Can you just bring that mic a little bit closer? Sure. We really want to hear you.
Yeah, so Stephen, you have your intention of global awakening. If you could just speak about that and maybe how that came about and what was the catalyst for it.
Okay, well, maybe I'll start with the first part of your question. The actual intention of global awakening and action is to work as a kind of a living laboratory to experiment with raising the collective consciousness of the participants in the group. So that's sort of a central core feature of the work that we're doing. And in terms of the context, that obviously serves the broader context of ideally bringing about this global shift in consciousness, where not just, small pockets of individuals who are sort of tuning into this idea that there is this possibility of awakening, but that awakening would emerge on a collective scale.
And a lot of people, just so we get a context, the word enlightenment, and there's a chapter in your book, Understanding Enlightenment and Barriers to Enlightenment. Can you, from a Western consciousness, what does that mean?
Well, from a Western perspective, it can mean many different things depending on the school that that is using the term. But in the way that we use it, enlightenment means the transcendental experience of returning to the source of existence itself, and that really is a kind of an ascending movement of consciousness where you rise above everything, and sort of establish yourself in really a transcendental position in relation to life. But that, in my understanding now, that's been traditionally, by many different spiritual traditions, understood as the kind of the pinnacle of enlightenment or the spiritual journey. But in my understanding now, that's sort of the top half of the arc, and then there's another part of the journey which is really bringing that same level of consciousness down into the world of form, using what you have at your disposal, the body, mind, and soul. And that it's that secondary part of the journey that's maybe not as well understood in Western consciousness, that is so integral to bringing about, or even having any chance of bringing about, a collective awakening. Because if it's not, then we're all just sort of living in a higher state of being, and when you're in that state of being, it doesn't matter whether the world survives or not. It kind of carries with it that sense of total detachment from the creative process. It just, wherever the universe is going to go, that's where it's going to go, and we'll just, incarnate in some other physical form. But if the goal is to really transform human consciousness, then this descending aspect of the journey has to take place, again, according to my understanding.
And in looking at what's unfolding, it's interesting, as you're speaking, it's coming to my mind that every day there's more and more scientific evidence of the spiritual aspects of what we're talking about in terms of consciousness. So it's as if what you're talking about in terms of once you've gone to those heights of understanding who we really are, to now come down in a grounded way of being able to actually understand in a way that, if you're one of the pioneers, if you will, or breaking the ground in this, that others can more quickly understand.
Move into that. Sure, yeah, the pioneers always make the way easier for the people that come behind. Absolutely. I think the other thing that's important to understand is that in this new enlightenment, or this new understanding of enlightenment, there's not the sacrificing of individuality, that through this process of sort of descending, that aspect of the spiritual path reintegrates your sense of individuality, which is something that you transcend in the first part of that arc. And that just means for a more grounded, enlightened individual, as opposed to a transcendentally enlightened non-individual.
Yes.
So you're human and beingness at the same time. It's a total integration of the beingness aspect and the human aspect.
It reminds me of, if you think of us as physical beings, the teenage years when they pull back and then they re-enter as adults.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, my teenagers anyways, that there is a way of having to find yourself and then re-entering as an adult, knowing that we are part of a community, and part of the desire of our consciousness of coming into this physical world is to be in community and to be with other humans and learn that and feel that.
It is, you know, I worked as a high school teacher for a while, and it was really nice to come at it from the perspective of, I mean, I wasn't open about it, but just, you know, examining what teenagers do. And my sense was that it's definitely a time of a kind of a spiritual or psychic opening to the soul, to what the soul is, and trying to figure out as best as you can as a teenager how you can still maintain that sense of your true self at the same time that you know, the world is kind of beckoning you to kind of enter into a world that isn't always as altruistic and as integrous as what you think the world should be like when you're coming at it from the soul. And that's an interesting transitional period that I'm not sure many human beings make it as well as they could if it was understood better. And if the culture supported that with an understanding that this is a precious opportunity for the individual to really awaken to their true self, and at the same time understand how you integrate that understanding in a world that isn't really necessarily living the truth that the soul knows inherently. It should, that the world should be living from spiritual truth. So
It's interesting. Anyway, go ahead, Hugh.
Well, Stephen, I just want to know, maybe we can just find a little bit about your spiritual awakening, which happened, I guess, in '96 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Do you want to sort of tell us the story of what happened?